观众朋友，大家好，我是马克，欢迎回到台美时空。加州呢是台裔美国人在这个美国最聚集的地区之一。那加州又分为加州的北部北加州和加州的南部南加州。那北加州呢包括了旧金山和矽谷地区，这是台裔美国人最聚集的地方。那这里呢不仅有从事高科技的人才和从事商业的这种精英，那也有很多人呢他想要为这个社会服务，那投身了政界。今天我想介绍一下美国国会众议院加州第17选区的陈柔恩 Anita。 她呢现在非常年轻，又是在这个美国接受了家庭教育，所以说她具有很独特的这种就是教育的背景。所以我想今天呢请她来向大家介绍一下她自己的这个经历，同时呢她为什么想要从政。 Anita 你好，你能讲一下你的童年经历和一些教育经历吗？
没问题。I was born here in the States and I grew up in the Bay Area. I've lived here for the last 25 years. And when I was in first grade, my mom pulled me out of private school so that we could homeschool. I homeschooled all the way through high school, had some pretty interesting experiences during that time. But one of those was I started a company at 16 to teach English writing and public speaking.It's a business that I continue to run to this day.
那个阿丽塔，你能讲一下，就是说你在家上学的这个为什么在家上学呢？就是一般的给人的感觉都是要去学校上学。
Yeah, I think so. Learning is not confined to a particular space. I think in everywhere that we are, we get to learn. I'm learning today from you. It's just that my parents chose to teach me at home.And they wanted to do so that they could instill some strong family and moral values in me. And I think they made a good choice.
您16岁创办公司，目的是什么呢？然后做什么事情呢？
Yeah, so the story goes back a little bit more. I was around 12 when my mom realized that I was not a very good writer or speaker. And I remember during that time I felt really scared because it felt like English writing was this big task that I needed to be able to do in order to survive and thrive in this society, and I couldn't do it. It felt like the American dream that my mom and dad had come for was about to fall apart in my hands. So I remember how scared I felt in that moment. And sometimes I still see it in the eyes of my students or my constituents when they feel like the American dream is about to fall apart in their hands. So I remember that, and I was really lucky though. When I was around 14, my mom found a really great writing teacher for me, and I began learning from her. And 2 years later, I was able to start a company, Courageous Communications, where our goal is to teach students the power of their own voice.
那您的公司是教其他人怎么去互相沟通，然后怎么去说英文，对不对？ 那你自己呢？觉得就是你怎么去克服这个作为一个亚裔，然后呢怎么融入这个主流社会的呢？
Yeah, I think so. There's the practical side of it, which we have to learn the skills of speaking well and writing well. And honestly, that just takes time and it just takes practice. For my students, it takes about 2 years before we see lasting results, although we try and give them a sense of success as soon as we can. But then I think there's also the mental piece where as Asian Americans, sometimes it's difficult to feel like we belong. And throughout this process, I've been learning we do belong. This is our country. This is our home. This is the place that we love and we've contributed to. And getting over that mental hurdle allows us to step into the mainstream in a way that maybe we didn't think was possible before.
你教的这个学生呢，基本上都是亚裔或者是台湾人吗？
I have a lot of students all throughout the Bay Area. Often they do have some Asian blood. It's Vietnamese Americans, Taiwanese Americans, Chinese Americans. It's all kinds.
他们最后学习了以后有什么就是进步吗？或者是有什么很大的改善吗？
Yeah, I do see a lot of change in my students, especially if they stick with it for a little while. And I think for me, the most satisfying part is to see the confidence in their face and their eyes when they know, yeah, I know how to write well.
你就是在这个过程当中，你觉得你是能够融入到这个主流社会当中的，是不是？
Yeah, I think so. Through this campaigning experience, it's been really beautiful to see people of all different colors and backgrounds supporting the same idea that we are Americans, we love our country, and we will fight to make it more beautiful for ourselves and the next generation.
那就是你怎么帮助你的学生能够找到他们的自信呢？或者是能够改善他们自己的这种沟通上的这种就是焦虑呢？
Yeah, I think it really depends on what type of student there are. There are some students who have writing trauma. They've just failed so many times and have so many red marks on their homework that they feel anything with writing is scary to them. So I try and give them an early sense of success. I encourage them a lot, and I give them the pathway upon which they can see that success in the first class. There's also students who actually have quite a lot of ideas and just need to trim it down. So for those students, I tend to have a conversation with them. We write down all their ideas and we pick out the best ones so that they can have a clear path of what to write.
那你觉得就是在这个过程当中，那你怎么想到说我想要就是从事这个就是投入到这个国会议员选举呢？
That's a great question. You know, it was not really in my career pathway or projection. I do remember when I was 12, I had early dreams of wanting to be a foreign diplomat, but that career path didn't seem viable for someone like me. And so I thought maybe the way that I'll make my mark is through education. And I was happily doing that for 10 years. I think there's always been a part of me to try and impact the world around me, and I thought that was through education. But this summer, I watched a movie called Sound of Freedom. It's about child sex trafficking in the United States. And I realized for the first time how deeply pervasive this issue is here in the States, and particularly in the Bay Area. For years, I'd read stories of women and children globally who are being exploited, and I always hoped that I could do something for them. But when I realized that it was happening in my own backyard, I felt that I needed to use my voice to speak for the voiceless.
一般的就是在这个美国从政呢，基本上是从地方开始的，对不对 ？Local， 然后呢 city， 然后呢是state， 然后呢是国会。所以说，但是您呢是一下子就要挑战这个国会众议员的这个位置，你觉得为什么这么选择？
Yeah, that's a great question. And as an educator, I know the big leap that I'm trying to take. It's almost like I'm going from pre-K to a PhD. And I know that the normal path is through local, then state, then federal. I think if it had been in my career path to be a politician or a public figure, that's what I would have done. But that's not my story. I was happily being an English teacher. I still am. And I watched this movie. 9 days later, somebody asked me if I would run for Congress. There's an opportunity to do so, and he was willing to support me. And you know, in that moment, I just thought, what if this platform gives me the opportunity to tell their stories? What if? And from that place, I said, okay, I'm willing. It's been a wonderful, terrifying journey. It's a lot of things that I've never done before, and I've had to step out of my comfort zone more than I've ever could have imagined. But every time I remember, this is a place where I get to tell those stories and represent those voices that are not yet heard. And I see that as a tremendous privilege.
是您主要的这个政见当中，一个很重要的就是人口贩卖这部分，它基本上来说就是可能是个国家的这种概念了，对不对？
Yeah.
所以说，那你要挑战这个国会议员，所以说，但是这个难度是蛮大的。那您在这个就是在想要成为国会议员的话，你除了这个人口贩卖这部分以外，你还有什么其他的一些政见吗？
Yeah, so when I first fell on the issue of human trafficking, I started to do a lot of research. So as a teacher, I like to make sure I have my facts straight. And as I was researching, I found that human trafficking is actually just a symptom. When we see economic vulnerability, when we see social vulnerability, housing vulnerability, we find trafficking. And so I realized that trafficking is just a symptom of the issues that face all of us. The economy, inflation, gas prices, all of these are issues that we feel. The border security, community safety, all of these affect our everyday lives. And so I began to see, okay, I began with the issue of human trafficking to be a voice for the voiceless, but there are so many more people who also feel voiceless, particularly on issues of safety and on educational freedom. And so these have been my three cornerstones of the campaign. The first is dignity restoration for trafficking survivors. The second is community safety to uphold the rule of law. And the third is educational freedom to ensure that children get the highest quality education that they can.
Anita， 你作为那个第二代那个台湾移民，那你有没有参与一些就是在台湾社区的一些活动呢？
Yeah, I've been really lucky to visit Taiwan often since I was a kid. But two experiences that stand out to me is one, I went with Summer AID. It's a program by the Taiwanese government where they ask 第二代台裔second-generation Taiwanese Americans from all over the world to go back to Taiwan to teach English. And I was lucky enough to go to Lisan 国小, Lisan Elementary. It's the elementary in Taichung area, and we were able to serve the 原住民, the Aboriginal tribes there, and I still have friends to this day from that experience. Another experience is I was able to visit Taiwan as a student delegation as part of FASCA. And so I was lucky to be able to meet with quite a few different people and different sectors and visit all different parts of Taiwan, including the night markets.
Oh, yeah. 那你最喜欢台湾的哪些吃的吗？
臭豆腐。
臭豆腐。回台湾的话，应该有很多台湾的美食可以享用。
有珍珠奶茶、臭豆腐、牛肉面。
OK 好，那你觉得在湾区的话，你能看到很多台湾人吗？对不对？然后你觉得在湾区的这些台湾人和这个台湾社会和美国这个主流社会，他们比较融合吗？还是还有很多有待改进？
I think that's the personal question. Some people probably have felt that they're able to join the mainstream American society more. Some people feel less. I think I was very lucky to grow up in the Bay Area where I didn't feel like an outsider in the sense that there are many people around me that look like me. But it took me a while to feel that, yes, this is my country, I belong here, and I have gifts that I can share and contribute.
Oh, yeah. 那你感觉美国这个社会对于台湾人，对于台湾，那他们的态度是怎么样的？
I think Americans are always very friendly to Taiwan. The Taiwanese people are very friendly people, and so I think there's a great deal of friendship there.
那你最后有些自己想要说的一些话吗？对于观众朋友们？
我想我这边用中文讲，因为其实我心里话还是用中文讲会顺一点。我想在这个过程当中，我发现我们要走到主流社会的时候，可能心里会有很多害怕或紧张，怕人家不会接纳我们，或者也许我们讲的英文不够好，我们做的方式不是主流最会做的方式。可是我发现这都是我们心里的一个害怕。当我们勇敢的接受自己，勇敢的做出自己，我发现其实有很多人会用双手的拥抱着我们。我自己的经历也是这样。当我勇敢的说我是个美国人，我爱美国，我希望美国可以更好的时候，发现好多不同族裔的人，包括主流社会的美国人，也愿意站在我这一边，跟我一起征战。我相信观众的朋友们，如果心里有一些害怕，有一些紧张、不确定的部分，想鼓励大家勇敢的接受自己，勇敢的做出自己。我相信你也会发现很多人愿意走在你旁边。
你觉得怎么让一个人实现他的在美国呀，能够实现他的美国梦呢？
我想大家的美国梦都不一样吧。可是，以我的经验来说的话，要勇敢的接受自己，勇敢的做出自己。那在这里，我们就可以实现自己的梦想。I think in the current political climate, it's easy to be discouraged, and it's easy to think that our voice doesn't matter. And so we give up on politics and voting altogether. But when all of us think that way, there's a sense of defeatism, and it's easier to win in a group of people who are defeated than a group of people who believe that their voice can make a difference. I also grew up that way. As an Asian American, I didn't really think that I could influence society or that society was really influencing me. But I'm finding more and more that the decisions that are made affect our daily lives. It affects how we live. It affects how we feel safe or don't feel safe, our educational path. And so if we feel that we want to make a difference, it's that unsettling feeling in our heart, sometimes in our stomach, where we feel something's not right. I want to encourage everyone to respond to that feeling by making your voice heard through your vote. Decide who represents your values, who represents the future you want to build the most, and give them your vote. Because through your vote, your voice is heard, and we get to create the future, the America that we want to live in.
观众朋友，你觉得阿丽塔的故事对你有什么启发吗？如果你觉得好的话，请点赞、订阅和转发。欢迎大家锁定台美时空，我们下期再见。